Well, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'm Ed DeVoe, president of the New Jersey CannaBusiness Association, the state's first and largest trade association for the cannabis industry. And I want to welcome everyone once again to another exciting session or segment of our Lunch and Learn program. So before we get started, I want to first thank our sponsors. Today's sponsors are Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, Dutchie, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Garden State Green, PROTEUS 420, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, Saks LLP, the Sheet Metal Workers Local 19, Sprague Energy, our energy partner, Syska Hennessy Group, and I'd also like to point out the UFCW, United Food and Commercial Workers. And before we get started, I'd like to just highlight some upcoming events with the NJCBA. October 6th, next Thursday, October 6th, we are having a Cannabis Career Fair and Expo with one of our education partners, Union College in Cranford, New Jersey. It's a half-day event. It's from noon until 4:30. Exciting speakers, including confirmation that Commissioner Maria Del Cicoso will be with us. So please feel free to come register. If you're a vendor, this would be a great opportunity for you to see what an exciting future for the workforce. So come register as a vendor. We'd love to have you there. So Thursday, October 6th, love to see you there. Also, in Union County on October 27th, huge event, our Cannabis Connection 2022. This is where if you are a conditional license holder, this is where if you are an ancillary business, you need to be there. This is not networking for the sake of networking. This is all about the business of cannabis. October 27th, please register. You got to come, you got to get connected. Let's run the commercial. Can we run the commercial?
Hi, I'm Scott Rutter, founder of the New Jersey Cannabis Association. And for years, Tara, Leo, and I, we've crisscrossed the state of New Jersey, advocating for patient access and legalization. But now that legalization's done, we're turning from advocates to applicants. And today, we're excited to invite you to NJCBA's Cannabis Connection 2022, the state's largest networking event in history for the cannabis industry, on October 27th.
As CEO of Blazin' Bakery, I know firsthand the importance of building the right team from the right network. As a manufacturer, I need the right connections at every level to source the best flower to get my products on dispensary shelves. That's why I'm going to NJCBA's Cannabis Connection on October 27th.
As a veteran, advocate, and now cultivator, I know that any successful operation is built on trust. I know a ton of people across the industry, which is why I don't want to have to guess on who my right partners will be. I'm going to NJCBA's Cannabis Connection on October 27th to find the right partners who will help me execute on the strategy for my business.
Unlike other conferences, Cannabis Connection is not going to have you listening to speakers all day. At the Cannabis Connection, you're the star. It's about you and your business.
So join the cannabis business community on October 27th and make your cannabis connection. We can't wait to meet you.
Great. Oh, and just as a reminder, it's not a golf outing. We're just eating at a golf course. So you can bring your clubs if you want, but you're not playing. We're here to do business. So with that, again, just another exciting segment of Lunch and Learn. This is such a huge topic today, very important. As yesterday, I ended up testifying at an assembly subcommittee regarding compliance and avoiding predators and predatory lending. And so today is going to touch upon just that subject. And so with that, I want to introduce Nath. Dev, you are fantastic. You've always been supportive of the NJCBA. You and your company, you've been great members. So I just want to turn it over to you to introduce our panelists and take it away.
Ed, thank you so much. You guys are doing a great job, and that upcoming conference on 10/27 really sounds exciting. So please keep up the good work, and whatever help we can give, just a small portion. So we love to do that. So today, let's talk about today. We got a great panel here today. We're going to keep it relevant and short. So thank you for joining us on a Friday, everyone. Appreciate it. Talking about the panel, we have a great panel, as I said, and they're ready to have a real talk about how to stay compliant. That's really what it's about. How do we all stay compliant, and how do we make money the right way? So let me just very quickly introduce the panel. First, I have Akash Govil. He's the compliance director of Zencorn, the same company that I'm with. And he has a tremendous amount of expertise coming from primarily from his risk management arena for banking and community banks, from Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering, all of the good stuff that you don't want to know anything about, but he does. We also have, pleased to have Allison Kirchhofer. Did I do that right, Allison? Okay, thank you. Who is the owner and founder of Accounting by Design. As a CPA, she possesses extensive experience in the accounting arena and is also a director and co-founder of the New York Consortium of Cannabis Accountants. Thank you, Allison, for joining us today as well. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we have Dawne Morris, Chief Marketing Officer and co-founder of PROTEUS Business Solutions, which is an online enterprise resource planning ERP system, which hopefully you'll get into a little bit later, explain the difference, why we need an ERP solution. For e-commerce, retail, healthcare, and highly regulated industries, including alcohol and cannabis. Dawne brings decades of finance, digital marketing, and design experience into the organization. Thank you, all of you. So I'm going to be quick and start it right off with Akash. And let me just ask you, we hear a lot about cashless payment systems and programs. Why is that even important? Why do we need to pay attention to that?
Well, that's a good question, Dev. To start off, there are a lot of options out there, but not all of them are compliant. As you know, I'm part of Zencorn. We have a service called Zenco. It's a mobile payment app. What makes Zenco compliant is that we do not use Visa, MasterCard, our American Express rails to process transactions. So that means no debit cards, no credit cards. Why? Because that is technically illegal. They don't want you transacting with cannabis payments on their platform. And with Zenco, we route checking accounts on our private ACH network. So that facilitates a compliant payment that makes consumers happy, as well as the merchant from getting in trouble potentially.
So you're saying that as a cannabis operator, retailer, you've seen people get in trouble because they're using a debit card solution or a credit card payment solution?
Yeah, so Visa, MasterCard, American Express have publicly also announced that they do not want anybody using their platform. This does violate their user agreements, and other methods out there are basically manipulating the system that use debit cards to ensure that transaction on a debit card rail processes. When I say it manipulates a transaction, it manipulates the banking regulation. It disguises that it's a cannabis payment from banks as well, from Visa, MasterCard, American Express. It makes it hard for them to know it's even happening.
Well, that certainly does put some limitations in terms of the payments. I know payments is a huge area, and that's why one of the reasons that we're having this conversation. And especially startups are tough in any industry, but cannabis, it seems even more because of the challenges of the regulatory requirements and banking limit and payment limitations. So thanks for sharing that. Allison, let me just jump into you then, if you don't mind. I know you've been in the cannabis arena for a while and you've seen it all. Can you share what predatory type of transactions you've seen and what people need to be aware of?
I've been working licensed applicant, so that's my background and experience.
Allison, can you raise your volume a little bit?
I think perhaps.
Perfect.
Is this better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, without realizing what that Akash was going to be kicking off with discussing cashless ATMs in my in my book, cashless ATMs are still non-compliant. And I say that because I mean, I do a lot of networking and I speak with a lot of vendors who are out there claiming that they found the solution. But like I said, you know, in my opinion, cashless ATMs are non-compliant. And the way I determine whether I would recommend a service to a client is whether or not they're telling me that they're rounding up and paying back change to the customer. That is the red flag that makes me say, okay, what you're really doing there is you're disguising the nature and source of the transaction. So, you know, Akash didn't use this word, but it is fraud. And, you know, I'm always thinking about the IRS's perspective, and the IRS does not want people to steal, and they do not want people to lie. And so these cashless ATMs, you know, there's more and more popping up. It's concerning to me. That's what I'm seeing in my experience and the conversations I'm having, that I'm meeting somebody new almost every week telling me that they found this payment solution. But if it's not an app like Zenco, and there are a handful out there, then I would never recommend it.
No, I think it's a good point. I mean, and it's hard sometimes to explain to people and understand that. Please be wary of that. You know, you may not get shut down day one, may not get shut down in a year or 6 months, but it's a risk that you're taking, and understanding risks that we take in businesses are important. And I think that's part of our discussion.
And it's everywhere. Like when you go to dispensaries, well-established dispensaries, you see it. So that's why it's confusing. It's like misinformation out there that is allowed. But I think that the dispensaries that do utilize those payment solutions are just willing to take that risk. But you know, my clients are small businesses, mom and pop, I guess you would say, and it's just not worth it. But then there's the other side of, you know, dealing with a lot of cash, which we may get into in our discussion.
Absolutely. Dawne, do you want to jump in here? I mean, and tell us a little bit about ERP and how the payment system is intertwined and integrated, and an important aspect of completing a transaction.
Yeah, so before I start that, I kind of want to back up kind of what they're talking about. So a couple of things that I think is really important, especially in the New Jersey area, especially because it's a new emerging marketplace now. We have a lot of regulations, and cannabis is always ever evolving and ever changing. You know, you're going to talk to a lot of people. Vetting is very important. So when we talk about payment processing, accountants, consultants, things like that, even technology sources, vetting is the biggest thing that every business owner, whether you're a boutique cannabis shop or you're an MSO or MLO, it doesn't really matter. Vetting that process and vetting the companies that you're working with and making sure that they are working in a way that best resolves your business operations and stays compliant. Because at the end of the day, cannabis is very restrictive in the fact that we have to be working from a loss prevention mindset. We have to think that product and money cannot walk out that door. And money and product does grow legs in this industry. And it's really important to understand that when we talk about the solution for proper business transactions, it's not just technology, it's the starting out when you're in your process of the pre-licensing, the pre-licensing, the licensing, and then the business launch. So when you think about that, there are very specific things that you need to kind of check off your list, right? You need a great set of SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. So before you even apply for your license, you should have hired a tax accountant, and you should have hired an attorney to help you accomplish that, and or a truly vetted consultant. The next step is then you bring in that tax accountant and they make sure that your books are set up properly. And then the technology comes in alongside that. And that's kind of where I come in. Just where when I think about where the industry was and where it's moving to and where it's going to be changing and modifying over the next 10, 15 years, we're going to see the regulations move and change. And especially as big alcohol and big tobacco figure out ways to get into this space, which they have been trying for years. But just so that people understand where my expertise comes in from, I have been in cannabis since 2008. My company has worked with the very first Prop 64, the very first federally granted license in all of the states here in California. Wow. So we've been in this industry since 2008 working with them. We have now been in the industry now for 15 years. And so when I talk about vetting, you'll get a lot of companies who will come in and they'll say, well, we've got, integrations and partnerships with 60, 70, 80 people. That's great. But what does it do for the end user? It doesn't really do much other than add more overhead costs to them. And at the end of the day, the person who's got those partnerships is making money off of it, right? So partnerships should always be well established. You're going to hear me say the word vetted again. They should have had at least 3 years experience in the industry. They should have knowledge from an accounting standpoint. When you talk to Allison, she's going to tell you about the 280E recuperations, right? Where the tax implications for what is technically a cost of goods sold and not a cost of goods sold. And then you've got Zenco and you've got Akash, where he comes in and says, well, look, we're going to work within the technology. We're working within the compliance and the tax regulations. And we're going to make sure that the technology and your payments are working in a way that are able to be audited on a transaction by transaction basis. And that is where the liability therein lies. So when we talk about these business transactions, it's really important for us to understand that, like Allison said, if you've got someone who's coming in and they have to round you up, they're not legitimate. If you do to the penny, that's where you're going to get into that. They've got approval letters, they've got banking letters, they've got those authorizations, and those will supersede that will supersede anybody else.
Okay. I know there's somebody on the chat has a question regarding banking, bank accounts, and maybe Allison, if you want to take it. I mean, you work with. I know I've seen you on LinkedIn respond to many people regarding banking limitations and where people can get a bank account. Do you want to touch base on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that come through from Jacqueline. So
yes,
Jacqueline, if you want to connect offline, I can make some introductions for you too. But there are, I think, Dawne, I think you would agree that there were many more unbanked cannabis businesses early on, but in New York and New Jersey, there are some options, and I've developed some relationships with the bankers that are out there working in cannabis. It's, a different process than any other non-cannabis business would experience, where, you can't open an account in an hour. There's a much more lengthy application process. It could take as long as a month. You can't just walk into any branch. But there are options out there. The limitations would be around, and I'm seeing different solutions from different banks in terms of how you can pay vendors, for example. Wires are, I believe, wires and ACH, it's one or the other, are allowed because one has more. I'm not the banking expert, but I know that one or the other has more of a vetting process. So, you'll have limitations there. I'll just say you will not be able to have a debit card where you can go make purchases. You have to write checks. So you have to figure out, what banks have the best solutions for you, so that you can just operate your business and pay vendors and payroll, et cetera. But there are smaller, more state chartered credit unions that are coming online in New York and New Jersey.
Yeah.
Right. In New Jersey, I know Liz Ciccone has a question regarding that they call 25 banks, and I think Ed, you just responded to that. But yes, if you need help with New Jersey, the banks that Ed just indicated on the chat certainly are the banks that we work with also in New Jersey. And also one thing, keep in mind, if you are in New Jersey, you don't necessarily have to bank with, I hate to say it, with banks in New Jersey if they're limited. There are banks outside of the state of New Jersey that also do banking and do equivalent the same thing, because one of the biggest concerns in banking is the cash that you have in your branch. And even if you have a local branch in New Jersey, you unfortunately can't take that cash and make a deposit yourself into the bank. That cash has to be picked up by an armored car, according to federal banking laws. So in that sense, the proximity of it doesn't really make much of a difference, unfortunately, other than the fact that that your bank exists around the corner. You can go and say hello to the teller. There's something for that, but I just wanted to throw that out there. If you need banking help, certainly reach out to any of us on the panel. We'd be more than happy to guide you the right way.
Yeah, I
Um,
see Ed put two in there, the names of two banks. And I know like five more.
Yeah.
Sorry, one is upstate New York. So four more as options. So Elizabeth, if you want to, I don't know if I should go through it now, but please let's connect and I can make introductions. I'd be happy to.
Absolutely.
And can I just add too, on the banking side, it's cash heavy. So cannabis will always be cash heavy right now until we're federally rescheduled and deregulated. So when we talk about cash heavy and what Dev was just saying, just to kind of expand on that, that means that money has to be picked up by an armored car truck at your location. RFID tags have to be usually accounted with that. And then the technology has to make sure that the deposits that are moving with that bank, that armored car and being received on the end banking side, you need to make sure that those are fully transparent. So that's where, when we came into play with the RFID tags, we actually went into cash deposits, we put RFID tags into the bags, and then that transfer. So once it's received, that RFID tag with the technology we built in allows you to actually confirm that the bank's received it, they validate the amount, and then that money becomes available. So when we think about it, again, you're going to hear the word vetted and predatory quite a bit. But when we talk about what banks should be doing is each transaction you make from a point of sale, from you to business, either vendor purchases as well as consumer purchases from your dispensary and or distro, then when you're looking at those types of items, they have to be audited by the bank. And that's why you're getting a lot of, banks that say no. It is taking a lot of time processing and on the internals, and it's a lot of overhead for the banks. So what we're finding, and this is across the board in all the states we work in, we're finding that most are family-owned credit unions are willing to take the chance. Federal large banks like Citibank, Bank of America, all those guys, they're not willing to do that. They don't want to put their FDIC insurance on the line. Again, this is still a Schedule I drug. So we do have to remember that anything that's on that Schedule I is already deregulated by a federal level. So anything that's covered by federal insurances and banking laws and restrictions, those are going to be they're going to be off the plate immediately.
I think that's a good segue, Akash, then to Zencorn and the need to reduce the cash. That's the biggest headache with the retailers, and it's expensive with armored car truck pickup as well. Yet the industry still continues to be so reliant on cash. I'll just turn it over to you if you want to say a few things.
Yeah, so obviously cash, anything that's cash intensive, like Dawne was talking about, is a lot of risk involved. So there's a lot of risk in the shop, a lot of risk for employee theft, a lot of risk for the customers too. You have people loitering outside and soliciting certain stores. There's a lot of threat that's available if there's a lot of cash on hand. So the purpose of payment apps, especially a compliant one, helps reduce that struggle. And to add on to what Dawne was talking about on the bank side, the banks are unwilling to open accounts for a majority of cannabis owners and businesses because they don't want to deal with that cash and high risk. They get audited by the FDIC. They have to file a lot more reports in the back end. There's a lot of more compliance that they have to do that they might not have the resources to do such. And, it's expensive for them too. So I know banks, if they are willing to open an account for you, they will charge a compliance fee, which is pretty competitive, but, there's not much to pick from. So, expect to pay that money.
So let me, Akash, that's an interesting question. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's interesting, right? So one of the things that I'm hearing a lot, I'm sure you hear too, is a lot of businesses complaining about the fees that banks are charging. Right. And that they charge anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a month, even more. What do you think I hate to put you on the spot, but do you think it's too exaggerated, those fees, or do you think there's a?
Well, you'd like to think that they charge those fees to help them, like what I was explaining, with the resources on the back end for them to conduct their compliance reports and to have enough people monitoring that activity, which is big. They need to be able to monitor the funds and articulate what is going on with the business. So you want to assume that's where those fees are going towards. But, like you were explaining earlier, you don't have to bank in state. If you have a digital payment app or something that's a compliant cashless payment solution, digital payment solution, you could bank anywhere across country and not have to worry about making trips to the branch, depositing those cash drops, armored truck deliveries, things like that. So it's a little bit more competitive. You have options. You're not just stuck to your locality in your certain area. And yeah, and that's something you can negotiate with the bank, you know. And I know a lot of those charges come from the amount of deposits you're bringing in. So if you're bringing in anywhere north of $200,000 cash a month, you might hit a certain tier or range, and they might charge you more money just to maintain that bank account. So it's a good idea to have a compliance solution, reduce that cash, and that's something you can negotiate possibly with your credit union or cannabis-friendly bank to lower that monthly fee. That gives you an angle and something that benefits them because it lowers the cash on hand and the risk and their reportings that they have to do. It benefits the merchant because it reduces the risk and threat of security and
So you're saying the takeaway would be, sorry, I interrupted again. The takeaway is that try to negotiate with the bank that if we have a reduced cash levels, charge me less fees, don't charge me the same thing as the other guys who are bringing in more cash.
It's possible.
Yeah. Allison, before we go, I just got to ask you one thing. Please, it wouldn't be, new businesses, they're all looking, they have business plans, they're conditional licenses. They look at their net income, and they have investors they're looking at. Many of them miss the tax aspect, the federal tax aspect and the net income. Can you share and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I see that a lot when I'm reviewing projections. I always make sure that the tax is calculated correctly. As far as I know, New Jersey follows. They have not decoupled like New York has. So the punitive tax code at the federal level that stems from 280E, which is the Internal Revenue Code section. You have it at the state and federal level in New Jersey, and you want to make sure that those calculations are correct and that cash flow is managed when you're doing your planning. So I could get into that quickly. I'll just say 280E in a nutshell. If you are trafficking a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substance, you are unable to take any credits or deductions on your business tax return. So that has huge implications. That there's a large that's why there's a large tax burden. And for startups, we have lots of conversations around entity selection because you want to sort of shield yourself from that tax liability as best you can. So anything that a non-cannabis business might set up wouldn't make sense in cannabis for the tax reasons. And linked closely to that, from my perspective as an accountant, it's accounts payable and cash flow management and tracking that liability in real time, making those quarterly payments, and having that incorporated into your projections. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Dawne, ERP, finally, what is ERP? What does it stand for? And what's the difference between ERP and POS? A lot of letters.
Right, a lot of acronyms there. So an ERP is a true ERP. A lot of people use the word ERP, but a true ERP, and what we do is we start from the minute you plant a seed in the soil all the way out to fully GAAP compliant accounting. So it includes all aspects of all business transactions, both from a core system that has the basis of business operations and then modulates itself based on micro business licenses or cultivators, manufacturers, distro, retail point of sale, and or delivery. Those all become modules and sit within the ERP itself. But at the end of the day, an ERP will talk specifically out to its own integrated accounting and financial system. So the system is a seamless transaction all the way from beginning to end, helping accountants, helping payment processing, and helping business owners make better business decisions. So what happens is you pay, for most ERPs, you could look at someone like an Oracle-based NetSuite. They start at about $30,000 per year, and that's not with, and they don't work in the cannabis space. Someone like us, we come in at a smaller footprint, no contracts, month to month at $375 is our starting price point, and then the modules add up from there. But right now we're servicing 40 states, both medically and adult use, and having been doing that for 15 years. We've seen a lot, been there, done a lot. But I did want to make sure that all the business owners here, because I'm a Philly girl, I'm an East Coast girl by heart, you know, I'm from Philly originally, and my family lives in Woodbury, New Jersey. So like I'm always back 2-3 times a year visiting. And one of the things that I was really excited about with New Jersey was the fact that they were actually starting to move this forward, because this was a great opportunity for people in an industry to not only assist with the drug addictions that we're dealing with in the war on drugs itself, but also being allowed to get people in an area that are affected by the large levels of fentanyl and heroin use off of those. This has been a gateway drug out of that. So it's great being able to see that and hopefully being able to see that in my home tri-state areas. So, but yeah, if anybody has any questions about technology from seed to sale, PROTEUS420.com is our domain, and I'm always available for conversations.
So now we know about ERP. Okay. Ed, any other questions from your end?
Great, Dev. I want to thank you for putting together the panel. Panelists, you guys are terrific. What a great summation of information that we really needed. Thank you all so much for your time. You know, it's interesting, and it drives me to talk about, first of all, membership in NJCBA. It's your membership that helps us put together this caliber of professionals, this caliber group of professionals. So your membership, if you're a member, great. Invite somebody else to be a member. It's absolutely awe-inspiring when I hear this type of information and how helpful it will be to people in this industry. It also reminds me of membership, because yesterday, not only did I testify, but our policy advisor testified at an assembly committee. And yes, New Jersey has a bill decoupling state from federal 280E. That bill was discussed yesterday. In fact, the significance of it was that it is removing a cap that was on the companies. So there was originally language in the bill that had a $15 million cap. They're removing the cap to make the bill more inclusive in the industry. So this is why the NJCBA exists, to testify, to support bills like that, to make sure that we are about succeeding and making sure that our businesses succeed. So absolutely, your corporate sponsorship, your membership, critical to the success of the industry. Lastly, and I'll just throw this out, we're talking about legitimizing the cannabis industry. Everything that was discussed today lends itself to legitimizing the cannabis industry. Is it a few more things that you have to do as opposed to other businesses and other industries? Yes, but if we don't do it, we fall flat, and then people can criticize the cannabis industry and those who are involved in it. So this is why all of this is so important. So again, panelists, Dev, thank you guys so very much for your time out today. I once again want to thank our sponsors, Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, Dutchie, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Garden State Green, PROTEUS 420, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, Saks LLP, the Sheet Metal Workers, Local 19, Sprague Energy, who is our energy partner, Syska Hennessy Group, and the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW. Everyone, thank you so much for once again taking the time to be with us. The weather is changing. We've seen tragedy in the southern part of the country. Look, there's not a day that goes by when there isn't tragedy, right? So I just want us to always be mindful, be kind to one another. That's so important. In fact, as I've mentioned in terms of the cannabis culture, it is a social culture. We love it. We're caring as a cannabis society. So everyone take care. The rain is coming. Be safe. Thank you for being at Lunch and Learn. Remember our October events. Visit our website to keep abreast of our events. And I look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Take care, everyone. Again, thank you, panelists. Thank you all for joining Lunch and Learn.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Ed.